Well, here we are on a Thursday night, and we've got another one of these 1,500-mile plus areas of winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories that run from New Mexico all the way up into Virginia. And we're going to be talking about this because a lot of areas in the south are going to see a sizable snowfall, along with ice, and of course some rain in the warmer air near the Gulf Coast. Does it make it up to the Mid-Atlantic to southern New England? Eh, eh. But we'll
Yeah.
talk all about it tonight, and we'll have an observer's viewpoint of all of this on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And if you are in line to support the Joe and Joe, of a mind to support the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, you can do it easily. Shop on Amazon and use our referral link that's pinned to the top of the chat board or on the description to this podcast. It's very simple. You use that link to get to Amazon, search for whatever it is you're looking for, buy it, and Amazon throws us back a little bit of coin. It's an easy way to support the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, and it doesn't cost you one dime out of your pocket. And we thank those of you who have used that link and supported us via Amazon. So we've got we have a special guest tonight, and he is, among other things, the Briller Jeopardy champion here when we do our trivia at the end. Rich, if he doesn't get it right, he usually just misses by one, so he really knows his stuff. Rich Rothmansky. I'm sure all your buddies on the chat board are happy to see you on with us on this Thursday night. And of course, Mr. Rayo is here. And big welcome to those of you who are on the chat board tonight, and those of you watching in the background. Welcome to tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. We're here Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time. And because I'm in North Georgia and we're going to get snow and sleet and freezing rain here tomorrow, we're going to be doing a show tomorrow night at 7:35. So mark it down. Subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss us, and make sure you turn your notifications on. And of course, if you like the show, hit the like button. And I also want to say hi to anybody that's here in North Georgia that's watching the show tonight. Welcome aboard. I hope you enjoy it because we're going to do a lot of coverage about what's happening across the South. So, Rich, tell us about, you've had an interesting history because you worked in radio, and you did forecasts for a lot of places, and now you've sort of found your way into the observing game at Kennedy Airport. So maybe just tell a little, tell us about how your career has moved along.
One thing I'm hearing your audio twice. Is it on my end?
It might be on your end. Do you have the show up on the screen?
Excuse me?
Do you have the show up on the screen? On your screen?
I have it on the Zoom.
Oh, okay. Well, there's double audio someplace, but it's got to be on your end because it's not on mine.
Yeah.
So I was just saying, just tell us about yourself and your career.
I started here at Kennedy Airport 35 years ago. Prior to that, it was Metro Weather, and Metro Weather back in 1988. And the first person who called me up for an interview was Hank Berg, and spoke to him. Went in for an interview. He had me analyze a bunch of charts. Next thing I know, I'm cutting tapes for radio, and next thing I know is like 3 weeks later, start on CBS News Radio 88 Saturday morning at 5:08 on Saturday, 6:08 on Sundays. So I was there for less than a couple of years, and went there for I was there for a couple of years, and I went to LaGuardia Airport for about 10 months. From LaGuardia to Kennedy on September 1990, and then from there, been here ever since. And we take our observations to the control tower, on a constant basis. We're 24/7. We never close down, even though we, Superstorm Sandy, all the snowstorms. We're constantly here. We get those observations out to everyone, and been doing this, like I said, for 35 years. And at one point, I was doing freelance work for Metro Weather, which they had film clients and TV clients. And times I'd be down in Lower Manhattan at 6 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday to film some they would do filming some commercials. And one of the commercials is a French credit card commercial called Credit Mutual. So did that for freelance, but mostly just been here and worked, like I said, with Pat Pagano, Hank Berg for a time, and like I said, been here ever since, taking the observations. And from Monday through Friday, my shifts 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. And a lot of people that work here have been with Metro Weather.
Joe, and I'm sure you've got some questions. I just want to ask you, Rich, really quick. Do you have on one of your open windows? Do you have the show opened up on YouTube?
Let me check. I do.
Then that may be where your
got
second
it.
round of volume is going. Okay.
Yep. I closed it out. Now we're a lot better. Now I can hear better.
Perfect. Okay.
My mistake.
Perfect.
That's a beginner right here.
It took my technical genius to figure that out, and I spent the day trying to get my cameras to work again, which they finally did. Mr. Rayo, jump in, please. I'm sure you have lots to say because you had your radio career before you ventured into TV, so you certainly relate to Rich.
So you were. I always thought that Craig Allen was working independent on CBS from Metro, but I guess Metro served as the backup in case Craig was on a holiday or was sick or on weekends. I remember way back they had a guy doing the weather on weekends named Steve Sambo, and then there were a bunch of other people who were doing it. I even remember Lisa Ritchie, who at one time was the news director at WBLI radio, and she was on doing the weather for CBS 88 on.
She was after me.
Excuse me? Oh, yeah, she was after.
She was after me. Yes. Craig Allen was the vice president of Metro Weather. I would fill in for him during the week. After CBS went in a different direction, I ended up having to sit in the same studio as Lisa Ritchie, but I had to do all the forecasts while she read everything on the air. I wasn't happy about it, but I had to deal with it. Well, but then after a certain time, I just left because student loans were due. The money wasn't all that great. I was asked at one point to work for Irv Jakovsky because a friend of mine who worked for CBS, who worked for Metro Weather on weekends, also worked for Irv Jakovsky doing the weather behind the scenes. And he had left to go out to Arizona for a TV job. But it's just with the student loans due and everything, the money wasn't worth traveling into the city different hours of the day. I turned that down, went to LaGuardia Airport. From there, when I came back here, I started then at Kennedy Airport in 1990.
That's the one thing I think a lot of people think, that if you're on a big station like WCBS, that you're making probably a lot of money, but it's not. Yeah, exactly.
No.
Exactly.
No.
And by the way, I know exactly how you felt doing the weather for Lisa at CBS, because there was a time I was doing the weather on WABC 77, and maybe it was the same mentality or the same people who made the decision at CBS. For whatever reason, they didn't want the actual meteorologist. They did not want the actual person with the experience. They wanted a very nice voice to be heard. And when I did the weather on ABC, they had a young woman by the name of, her name was Rasa Bubelis. She was Lithuanian, and they said, well, that's not going to work on radio. So they called her simply Rasa K. And Rasa K was the morning weather person, but she didn't know anything about weather. I could have typed out a forecast for her saying a sandstorm was going to come in tomorrow into the New York area.
Read it.
But I mean, she was okay. She was nice to get along with, but in the same way that you felt that you should be doing it instead of Lisa. I felt I should have been doing it instead of Rasa. But that's the way radio was back in the 70s and 80s. It was more leaning toward nice sounding voices as opposed to voices with experience. So
Yeah, I like I said, I went in, cut a tape for CBS, and a few weeks later started 5:08 a.m. Saturday morning on the air live, and be there at 6:08. And I did that about a year and a half.
Are you glad
It's like,
are you glad you're not doing it anymore?
well, for Metro Weather, Pat sold Metro Weather not too long ago. Pat Pagano, he was a fixture there with WALK, and we had all these stations. But I liked it. It was a good start. But how do you earn a living on it? You don't.
You don't.
You can't. I mean, you can't unless you're running the place, unless you're owning the place. But it's a great start. It's fun. I love doing the forecast. But at times you're doing so many forecasts and film clients that you're rushing to get everything done at one point. And you can't be accurate as you'd like to be. You want to be accurate, but you can't be accurate. And you're just ripping through forecasts left and right. You don't have time to analyze charts. So you have to do what you have to do. And like I said, you can't really earn a living on it. It's fun. It's a great start, but to earn a living is a different story.
absolutely. And then they couldn't understand when I was at the private weather service, which I refused to name to give them the highest bit of credit.
And I know some of the people that worked there that knew you. So
yeah, and you're right. When I got started, I was 21 years old, and it was a great thing to get started and do weather on radio. And I mean, Joe will tell you. I mean, I used to spend half of my week, like maybe 70 hours a week there, because it was great just being around the teletypes and the fax machines, have all this weather information. But after a while, after you get married and after you have children and you go out and you buy a house, you can't live off of the salary that they were paying me. And I'm sure you experienced the same thing.
Well, we were working 12-hour shifts at the time when I started coming here at Kennedy Airport. We had to change that because we only had one person, the two people just running the airport itself, the weather office. And after Metro, when I came to LaGuardia to here, the FAA wanted to expand the small businesses. So you basically had to have money to operate Kennedy, LaGuardia, Islip, and the weather office in Connecticut. And you're talking how many hundreds of thousands of dollars to run it. So
no, and in fact, I was on for 2 years. I was on 1010 Winds. Now, 1010 Winds is the biggest most listened to radio station in the United States. And you figure, oh my God, you're the weather guy on 1010 Winds. You're probably making a ton of money. And I wasn't making anything like that. And in fact, when the job opening at News 12 came along, News 12 Westchester, I went after it. And I was offered initially at News 12, I was making less money than I was making at the weather service that I was working at. And the three owners of the weather service private company I was working at came after me and said, "What are you, a nut? What are you, an idiot? You're on 1010 Winds. You're on the biggest radio station in the world. Why would you even leave us?" And I told them quite simply, I said, "You guys ain't paying me a whole heck of a lot."
No
and
money.
even though I went to News 12 initially, and News 12 was paying me less, I'll tell you what got me to go to News 12, and Joe could appreciate this. It was the benefits. It was the benefits. I had 2 young children, a wife, and I was getting ungats at the weather service that I was working at. They didn't give me anything. I had no medical package. I had no 401k plan. I had no. I did nothing. At News 12, at least, they offered me, aside from free cable, which was nice, but they also had a magnificent medical plan. And as I told the people who I was working for 17 years on radio, I said, and I told them, I said, why don't you get, it's a funny thing, we did 1010 Winds, but the contract was with Shadow Broadcasting. And then Shadow contracted out to us to provide the weather. And I told Shadow, I said, why don't you get together with the company I'm working with and offer me something that will keep me here instead of jumping over to town? They couldn't do anything. The guy said, he says, well, can't we level the playing field? I said, yeah, level it. Give me something to work on. We'll work with. Give me a. So I left to do radio, to do television, and they told me that I was making the biggest mistake of my life. They said, you're
Yeah,
going to.
television was just a fly by night thing, Joe. It was never going to take off.
Well, no,
You
they
know,
said they couldn't. They said to me,
it's like no cow pizza.
one of the owners spent like an hour and a half with me. He says, "How could you possibly leave us? We're doing 10-10 wins, and you're going to that little cable station in Yonkers." Well, P.S. The little cable station in Yonkers eventually grew to own the Lower Hudson Valley and be one of the most watched segments of the tri-state area. And with time, as we got more and more popular, the salary went up, 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 and it went up a whole heck of a lot more than what I was making at the doing radio at 1010 with 1010 wins. So, it sounds great when somebody says, "Oh, I'm doing CBS or I'm doing 1010 wins or this station, that
Yes.
station," but
Yes.
as you can verify, Rich, and I'm sure you too, Joe, because I know at one time you were doing WHLI, right,
Right.
and a bunch of other stations. It don't pay. It
No, it
never did.
doesn't.
No, no, it doesn't.
There was a little extra money. Paid some bills on the side, and that was fine. I mean, I had the full-time job, and I had all the little, bunch of little radio stations. I was doing New Jersey 101.5 as well, and later after they networked that, so then a bunch of other stations were part of it. It's a lot of work, and yeah, you don't make enough to make a living. You certainly don't make enough to make a living in the New York area. It's just the reality.
Don't. You're right.
Let's
You
uh
don't.
let's do some weather, and then I want to come back because I want to, Rich, I want you to maybe talk about what exactly you do when you take
Okay.
observations, because I don't think
Sure.
I think a lot of people don't really know that that whole process of what you're doing with respect
Absolutely.
to observations. But we've got this another day. It was just a week ago when we had the 1,500-mile stretch of winter storm warnings and blizzard warnings from the Central Plains to the Mid-Atlantic. And now it's tilted a little more northeast southwest, but not enough northeast southwest. But we've got winter weather advisories from New Mexico and into Texas, and then we have winter storm warnings in north central and northeast Texas, much of Oklahoma, even in northwest Texas, and a couple of counties in southeastern Kansas, all of Arkansas, northwest Louisiana, southern Missouri, all of Tennessee, southern Illinois and Indiana, almost all of Kentucky except the northeast, North Carolina, except for the coastal counties, and those are under winter weather advisories. Winter storm warnings in southern Virginia, the northern half of North Carolina, the northern half of Georgia, including Atlanta, the northern half of Alabama and Mississippi. So it's a big southern event, and of course, I've got a stake in this, as I've been saying for the last couple of days, because I'm really looking forward to here in the mountains to see a pretty decent snowfall. I can tell you, by the way, I'm down to 20. I'm radiating. This morning, my low was 12,
Ouch.
and Brasstown Bald, which is um, Georgia's highest peak, which is only about 10 miles from me. It's actually a little less than 10 miles from me. They were down to 4 this morning. And the highest I saw them get to today was 25. So I'm viewing this as going to be a really big meteorological forecasting lesson for me here in the mountains to see, among other things, how the cold air gets wedged in when it comes to a snow event, and also the various shadows that occur here depending on the wind direction. Where one side, if you're on one side of the mountain, you can get far more snow than you would get on the other side. We are seeing moisture developing fairly rapidly across the western Gulf of Mexico. The satellite's really loaded tonight with subtropical Pacific moisture streaming northward. into some very cold air, and that's the primary ingredient. There's actually higher pressures up in West Virginia and Virginia that's wedging that cold air down into the northern parts of of Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, and back over into Arkansas and north central Texas, which is why those areas are getting some snow. And this is what the radar looks like right now, fairly solid here. Uh, the the um, the lighter greens in northern Arkansas and western Arkansas into Oklahoma and northernmost Texas. Most of that is snow. There's some heavy precip uh, in central Arkansas, and we are starting to see echoes moving into Mississippi and some echoes aloft moving up into Alabama. So the Storm Prediction Center, I'm sorry, the Weather Prediction Center. I don't think SPC is doing anything, but I'll check. Uh, this is, there's a lot of moisture here. We've got a half to 3/4 of an inch extending all the way into the western Carolina mountains. But for those of you in the northern mid Atlantic and on up into southern New England, there ain't much. We're talking about a tenth of an inch or even less. And I think both of you will agree that um, whatever happens Friday night into Saturday morning, Rich, is probably going to be patchy and minimal.
Just like we had the other day.
Well, what we had the other day here was a bit of surprise for me here at Putnam Valley. I frankly was saying to myself, we'll be lucky if we'll get a flake, and if we do, we'll get just a sugar coating. And it ended up that we picked up a quickie inch of snow. Well, maybe not an inch, more like a half to maybe 2/3 of an inch. But still, I had to go out there and spend a couple hours scraping and shoveling off my driveway. So I'm not taking this lightly. I said less than an inch, and I still believe that's going to be the case. But I'm just wondering just how much we're going to receive. So far, I've received a grand total up here of about 7 to maybe 8 inches of snow. But all of those systems that brought that 7 to 8 inch mark, all of them have been, an inch here, a half an inch there, 3/4 here. We have not yet seen really a significant, and I did break out the snow blower once. That was only because we had like a 2 inch snowfall, but the snow was so blankety blank heavy in consistency. And I said, I'll be damned if I'm going to, shovel and scrape this because it felt like, almost like concrete. So I got the blower out, even though I don't normally take it out unless there's at least 3 inches. And I used the snow blower to throw or toss that heavy snow out. So that's the only time I've used. Otherwise, it's been hardly anything up here, and I'm just wondering what we're going to get out of this after passes by late tonight and tomorrow morning. In fact, Joe and Rich, I could even see. I believe that what's going to happen is that I think before the end of the day on Saturday, we're going to be breaking out into some sunshine and starting to clear out completely by Saturday night.
Wouldn't be a shocker, right?
Wouldn't doubt it.
All right,
What
so
wants to be a big storm?
I'm going to do a Jess Harden, who's on the chat board, who lives in Alabama, south of Birmingham. So I'm going to do this for you, Jess, because you're talking about the warm nose, and we're going to show you what the warm nose is, and I'll do a couple of points on the soundings here. So this is the HRRR model from an hour ago. The 0Z one is starting, and that's going to take us into Saturday morning. So that will be, I'm sorry, 0Z, what is that? Oh, 0Z Friday is where we are now. So this will actually, the HRRR, when it's done, will take us into Saturday evening. So we'll get some, we'll see how it handles the patchy snows further to the north. But here's our low that's developing, and the purple is sleet, the blue is snow, obviously, the greens are rain. You can see thunderstorms there down in Louisiana. Looks like even a little bit of a squall line developing overnight. And as it moves into the cold air, this is by 7 a.m. The entire northern half of Alabama is either in ice or snow, the same northern Mississippi, and you're starting to see that all moving into Georgia. This would suggest that there's probably going to be some snow and or sleet in Atlanta come sunrise. And then, of course, as we go through the morning and into the afternoon, precipitation starts to move further to the north. And you'll notice that the sleet line pushes up further north into northern Alabama and eventually reaches the Tennessee line. And this is as far as it goes because the model only goes to 18 hours. So this is noon on Friday. But I want to pull up a sounding for Jess, and we'll use 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. And I'm going to put it's Jess Harden. You put on the chat board that you've got um, uh, the. Hold on just a second. I'm just trying to do two things at once. So I've got your coordinates here. So I'm going to put them in, and we're going to take a sounding of your town, which is Wilsonville, Alabama. Okay, so let's go. It's
Hey, Mr.
33.23 and
Wilson.
yes, 86.48. And we'll submit. So what we're looking at here is off the HRRR model is a sounding. In other words, we're taking a picture of a vertical picture of the atmosphere. And you're seeing the plot of the temperatures as you go up. Just to make it a little easier, the freezing line is this line right here. I'm just going to stop it. It goes all the way down to the bottom of the chart there where you see the zero. So that's there. It has a ground temperature of 32 and a dew point of 20. I think that's a 29. And you'll notice as you go up in height, right in this particular zone, right here, and that's at the 800 millibar level. So that's roughly at about, say, 5,500 feet, 5,000, 5,500. The temperature at that level goes above freezing before falling back below. So precipitation falls, melts in that warm layer. That's the warm nose, where it's not as obvious here. It's kind of a gentle push above the freezing mark, but sometimes on some of these soundings, it can be um, much more pronounced. So we refer to that as the warm nose, and that is where you're going to be, once you get to that point, that warming, you're going to see a changeover to sleet and freezing rain. I'm going to do my own spot here in North Georgia, and this will be at noon, and I'm up near the North Carolina state line. So again, and this is the HRRR's picture view of things. And this is, oh, I almost got it on the nose. Speaking of warm noses, because I'm at 34.9 north and 83.9 west. I'm going to submit that, and we'll take a look at the sounding here. And it has a temperature of 33 at this particular spot. And you notice that it kind of straddles the freezing mark, but still stays mainly below freezing. So this would be a profile for snow. Are we agreed on this, gentlemen?
Good.
Yeah, I would agree. I haven't,
That's good.
admittedly, I have not done plotted a radio sound report. I've totally forgotten my TTAAs and TTBBs, but I would agree, considering how simple it is now to do this.
Yes.
It's already done for you.
Right. Well, the thing is, you're making the assumption that the model is correct. I mean, it's the model's producing this product, so the model is forecasting this. So it's a sounding forecast. It's not reality yet. We'll know reality when we get to noon tomorrow, just exactly what's going on. But one of the things I'm noticing today, which is really kind of frustrating from the forecast standpoint, at least for me here in North Georgia, is the fact that when I look at one of the other models, and I'm going to switch over to the European. The European, for some reason, and I'm not sure why this is, and this is 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm going to put in a sounding for where I am for the same, the same for the time frame. So let me go 34.9 and 83.9 and hit submit. You see where that little dot is on that map, folks. If you see it, that's actually where I am. The European at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, all the critical temperatures are below freezing, all the way up. All the way up to 10,000 feet, and then it just turns very cold after that. So I'm just kind of, it's interesting to me how some of the models are saying, okay, there's much more cold air than we think, and other models are saying no, it's the warm air that's going to the warmer models are the ones that are going to be correct. And I think that's what forecasters are struggling here with regards to snow amounts, because the longer that warmer air takes to get up there, obviously the more snow you can put down.
Who do you want to? Who do you
And
want to?
whoever, just
Want
take
to?
it.
Oh.
Take it.
Yeah, yeah, I
Tough
agree
luck.
with that. They're going to be conflicts in the models, which one's going to be correct, which one isn't going to be correct, and now once again, they're going to have to decide: is the sounding correct? Is this model correct? Is the short range model correct? The HRRR, maybe the NGM up to up to 24, 48 hours. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a very and it's frustrating on some of the other models too, because when you look at the soundings, uh, I'm not going to do all of them. I'm not going to do any other ones, but I was looking at some of them where the soundings were all below freezing, but the precip that's showing up on the map doesn't match the sounding.
Match it up.
You would look at the sounding, it's cold and it says all snow, and then you look at the map, it's saying sleet and freezing rain. So I'm not sure how to handle that in terms of, trying to come up with some sort of accumulation forecast that makes sense. How do you
Yeah.
resolve that?
And how much warm air is going to get interjected in the low layers? That's another story. Is right. Well, once again, it's wait and see now.
I was just going to say, Joe, if regardless if whether it's significant ice or significant snow, it's still going to be for you, since you've been down there. What the most notable or noteworthy winter storm systems since again that you relocated to northern Georgia.
Oh yeah, no question.
I mean,
Um,
it seems like you've been living a charmed life down there. I mean,
Well,
like
I mean, it gets really
it.
cold, and you talk about everybody's so frustrated in the Northeast because it's been such a cold stretch here that started right after New Year's. I mean, we're only 9 days into it, but all this cold air and nothing to show for it from the standpoint of snow lovers. I've been down here, and I've been down below zero several times
Excuse me.
in the last couple of winters, and we've had very little snow to show for it, even though it's been bitterly cold and not for just one night. I mean, we've had some stretches of several days where temperatures were bottoming down in the low single digits to below zero. So I'm kind of in the same boat with everybody else. Now, as far as snowfall forecast amounts are concerned, I'm going to post up the weather service here on the digital forecast. So they're going. We're going to shift it over so you can see where Georgia is. Tennessee does most of Tennessee gets between 4 and 8. They have about 2 to 3 inches for northern Georgia and for northern Alabama, and then the amounts tail off down to about an inch or so in Atlanta, and then even lower as you go down, just a coating in that lightish blue on the southern end, south of Birmingham, south of Atlanta, and to the east of Charlotte, and from Raleigh Durham on eastward. We're talking 6 to 8, 6 to 9 for much of central and northern Arkansas, including Little Rock, eastern Oklahoma, northeast Texas, just north of Dallas. So they got a 5 for Dallas. It'd be interesting to see what they finish up with. Also, some 7-inch amounts in southern Missouri. St. Louis is going to get at least 2 or 3 inches out of this. Southern Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky. I mean, this seems to be the spot this winter. This is the second one in a week, in less than a week. The number of these areas that are seeing snow again. And then we move into Virginia, where Southern Virginia, including Richmond, we're talking 2 to 4, 2 to 5, maybe. Going back into Western Virginia and into Western North Carolina and the mountains there, we're seeing amounts picking up to maybe 6, 7, or 8. and then also up into western North Carolina. And then, of course, you go up further north and you kind of figure out what's going to happen here is that this low is going to pass to the southeast, and we're looking at a coating to an inch for central and eastern Pennsylvania, the middle and lower Hudson Valley, into western and southern Connecticut and Long Island, New Jersey. You have to get down into southern Delaware where you start to pick up a couple of inches and higher numbers. This is this can't come up the east. This cannot come up the East Coast to bring a significant snowfall. It just can't.
No, it's not. We've been talking about for days, blocking, but also it's the inability of two systems, one on the northern stream and one from the southern stream, to interact or to teleconnect. If they did, certainly there'd be a much better chance of that system becoming energizing and kind of boring its way northward up the coast. But this simply is not going to happen. And all of that wonderful moisture that would translate into a significant snowstorm is going to instead turn into a fish storm for folks in the mid-Atlantic and northeastern United States. Sorry.
No phasing. No phasing once again.
No phasing. Yep. No
phasing once again.
And the problem is when you do get phasing, oftentimes you get too much phasing and you have a low that goes well to your west.
Exactly. Which the future models are interjecting. So
I love annoying Tom Contino. In my Facebook forecast, I'm referring to tomorrow night and early Saturday as spotty light snow or flurries. And that seems to annoy Tom. He doesn't like when I use that term spotty.
Well, what are you supposed to use? What term are you supposed to use? It's hardly widespread.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just an example of being annoyed with the whole pattern that we've seen to date. And hopefully for all of you snow weenies out there, we'll see something flip and we'll get into a different type of pattern. As I've been saying since the start of this winter, it's looking more and more to me like a repeat of the winter of 72, 73, where we had innumerable storms passing off to our south. And, you read about Delaware getting hit, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina. I remember sitting up one night listening to WBT out of Charlotte, North Carolina, talking about the big, like 15 or 20-inch snowstorm that they had. And I'm sitting up in the Bronx, and I had absolutely nothing to show for it. So so far, that's what it is making this a very familiar type of winter to me, is all those winters ago of disappointment. We'll see, however, things can change, and maybe it'll change for all of you snow lovers.
We got the cold air, We got the cold air. The antecedent cold air is there. That's
you have too much blocking, and I've said this so many times. If the folks that say when we're not getting storms, it's because we have no blocking. Well, now you've got too much of it, and it leaves no room for anything to climb up the east, up northeast when these storms come off North Carolina or Virginia. They're going straight east. They can't move northward because the block is there.
You can't have too much of something. I remember a friend of mine. He had to make a move, and he's piling. He's saying, "I'm going to get as much as I can into my car," because he was moving from one place to an apartment to another apartment. And I said, "Are you sure you can move all this stuff? That's a lot of stuff." "Oh, don't worry about it. I can do it. And what happened? He put so much stuff in the car, piled so much stuff in, that he broke the shock absorbers. I guess you could say we're breaking the shock absorbers with this big block this year. Too much is sometimes you say too much is not enough. Well, this year you got more than enough blocking, but unfortunately, it's working against you so far as snow is concerned.
And last year we had good blocking, but any storms went to the west of us.
Right.
So it
doesn't matter if the troughs and ridges aren't in the right place. No amount of blocking is going to save you.
You can look at the charts. They say, well, look, 10 days, 7, 8, 9, 10 days out, it looks great. Well, yeah, at the time it looks great if you're looking at it, but when you get into the short range, is that still going to be the situation? And most of the time, no. as we were discussing, you have too many charts, you have too many computer models focusing on too many different things, and getting consensus is it's a different story.
And then, by the way, you have two standout winters, 2013, 14, and 14, 15. Those were two winters where we had no blocking at all,
Right.
and they were particularly 13, 14, and 14, 15 got underway in the middle of January. Actually,
Yes, remember that.
the last 10 days of January, and it stayed cold right through the end of March, and we had numerous snow events through that whole stretch. Both of those
Yep.
winters had no blocking, minimal, if any blocking at all. They had none. Yet the way the atmosphere set up, the troughs and ridges were in the right spot, and the cold air was in the right spot, and there was plenty of it. And those were two winters where, as I recall, if you go back and look at any of the storms that we had in those winters, we had snow in much of the southern areas of the Northeast and into the mid-Atlantic states, where much of the time temperatures were in the teens and low 20s during the snowfall. There were even a couple of events where we had temperatures in the low teens and single digits. So it's all about where the troughs are, where the ridges are, how strong are these short waves that are coming through, how sharp are they? Are they creating the right atmospheric conditions for precipitation to develop? And there you go. I put
Joe,
up on.
Joe, give me sharing capabilities.
All right, just let me get this map done real quick.
Yeah, yeah.
This is the latest. This is the 18Z European. No, it's the 12Z European. Okay, let me get the 18Z European. The 18Z European with respect to snow amounts um, that it's forecasting. Because I think if you're going to look at snow maps, when you look at snow maps at 300 hours, it's garbage. But when you're inside 48 hours, I think that's when they become useful because you kind of know how much precip you're going to get. So you could sit there and do the math and do everything at a 10-to-1 ratio, or maybe you think the ratio is going to be higher than that. But these are all based on 10-to-1 ratios. And actually, the European has been, what's interesting to me about the European, at least for Georgia, is that uh, it's, showing some robust snowfalls. The dark blue that you see in north and northeast Georgia, that's all 3-4 inches or more. And even down in Atlanta, it's giving up to 2 to 3 inches of snow before any changeover. So the European is sensing a colder atmosphere and maybe not as an aggressive, a warm, a warm push of air coming up from the Gulf of Mexico. And there's a band of in southwest Tennessee, northwest Alabama, northern Mississippi, and covering much of Arkansas and back to southeast Oklahoma, where you're looking at 6, 7, 8 inches of snowfall. And I'll switch over to the mid-Atlantic states so you can take a look at when this storm system reaches the Carolinas and then starts to move out to the east-northeast. If we look at the snow map here, yeah, there's a little, kind of a tongue of 3, 4, 5 inches into southern Virginia and northeastern North Carolina, back into, narrowing down into western North Carolina. But look at all that gray. Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, central and eastern PA, the Hudson Valley, southern and central New England. We're talking snow amounts in tenths of an inch, Joe.
That's our winter. That's our winter's been going.
All right, Rayo,
Up here.
you got the screen. Share away.
Okay, hang on for a second. What the heck is this? Thank you, Skip. I want to get this stupid thing. I'm seeing that they're advertising a movie on my screen. All right. No, screen sharing is still not turned on, Joe.
Oh, it isn't? Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on a second. Now it is.
Okay. And Jessica Walker on the chat board seemed to be incredulous when I was talking about 1 to 2 feet of snow in North Carolina. And so for you, Jessica, and for everybody else,
When did you say 1 to 2 feet of snow in North Carolina?
Excuse me?
When did you say 1 to 2 feet of snow in North Carolina?
I said before that I was listening to WBT up here in New York.
Oh.
WBT is a station in Charlotte, North Carolina, and the state of North Carolina, at least part of it, was snowed in by this tremendous. And this was that year of 72, 73, where New York picked up a grand total for the winter of 2.5 inches. And here is just one example of when you have much too much blocking. And look at this is the Great Southeastern Snowstorm, February 9th to 11th, 1973. In this red zone that you see here, this is actually South Carolina. I see numbers like 21, 24, 21, 18, 19. But look at this. The snows went all the way down to northern Florida, where they had trace amounts down to central Florida. And in the panhandle, like around Tallahassee, 2 inches. Hey, Joe, look at this. You missed out on this big storm. Northern Georgia completely missed all the snow. It was concentrated more over central and southern Georgia, southern sections of Alabama, and across much of South Carolina. Usually when you get a heavy snowfall in South Carolina, it's usually confined to the mountains in the far northwest. But look at this. Went all the way to the coast, 12 inches of snow. In I don't know exactly where this is in South Carolina, and then you continue up into North Carolina, where you have numbers like 7.9 and 16.2. Hatteras, Cape Hatteras, the Outer Banks, the Capes even had like 3.3 inches. Up here's Norfolk, Virginia. I think they had about what 3, 5, and then that cut off right here at the bottom end of the Delmarva Peninsula, and everywhere north of there saw nothing. So there you go. That was the storm of 1973, which I remember from childhood, and I almost went to bed crying that night, remembering oh my God, they got all that great snow, we got nothing, and that was 1973 in a nutshell. I hope for all of you snow lovers out there, we don't have a repeat of that, but the way things have been going lately, that it's looking more and more like this type of a pattern.
Oh yeah. Oh no. Yeah. It really is. Which may mean that I have more chances down the road. I'm going to run through real quick what what's going to be happening. So our low is going to be sort of straddling the Gulf Coast. Then it makes the jump to the North Carolina coast early Saturday morning. You can see that there's also a trough that's moving across the Great Lakes. The snow that's going to happen probably is more from the trough than it is from the system to the south, because the two systems are separate, clearly. And then the low just kind of goes along its merry way. Will dry out, and temperatures will probably be close to average, but there's another cold front that's going to come through sometime on Tuesday, and then we get much colder air, and the wind machine's going to come back on, Joe, probably and Rich, starting Wednesday, and intensifying a bit for Thursday and Friday, because the block gets reinforced. And while that block is still out there, not much can happen. And then, of course, we've got something, we go into the week of January 19th or 20th. The one thing that I'm looking at with this, and that's our 100 likes, by the way.
Yep,
Joe
101.
rings bells when we get to 100 likes. Um, the block seems to relax a bit enough to allow for maybe a low that go up the west side of the Appalachians. I don't know if I believe that necessarily at this point, because
What time
we're
period is
talking about
that?
January 20th, 21st. Some kind of low that goes up into the Ohio Valley and then it winds up in Canada. And I think that a lot of that depends on, whether the block relaxes enough for that to happen. And then it's got more cold air that comes in after that, and some kind of another important low that goes up to our west of size, if you believe the European, but it's been kind of moving all over the place in the long range, and I am not going to put any substance into anything other than to say that all of next week is going to be dry. I think that we can say, pretty safely. So,
And again, anything after 5 days, like I said, is just pure entertainment.
yeah. So, Rich, take us through, if you would,
Sure.
what you do at Kennedy. You take observations, and I think most people don't know what exactly it is you do um, every hour. Every hour in your 8-hour shift.
Well, we have to identify cloud types. That's one thing, especially with severe weather. which way is the cumulonimbus moving? Is there lightning in the cloud, cloud to cloud, cloud to air, cloud to ground? We feed everything into this machine. If you can see it, I'll show you here. This is the ASOS, this big bulky thing, which was commissioned. Excuse me?
No, I was going to say, you're actually, but we should let people, I was going to say, you're actually at Kennedy right now.
I'm at Kennedy. 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Friday. I have my hours.
And are you located in the FAA tower there, or is it?
No. Let me see if I could. We've been at this part of the airport since 1999. I've been at Kennedy since 1990. We were located in the international arrivals terminal up until 1999. I've been here long enough to see the old tower come down piece by piece, the new tower being finished. By that time, several years later, a Scandinavian company came in, made plans to build a new international arrivals terminal. That was called Schiphol. At that time, they were also building the air train from Kennedy to Jamaica. Middle of 1999, June 5th of 99, actually, they moved us into this part of the airport. We're on the outskirts now. So where we were located at the base of the tower, close to it, we're now located 2 3/4 miles away from the control tower. The ASOS sensor pad is also right around a couple of miles. The main sensor pad is about roughly east of us. The secondary sensor pad is to my west. But we have all the sensors feeding into everything. We take the observations. We send everything into, let's see if I can give you a good indication here. Right here, behind me, where I'm pointing to, which feeds our temperature, dew point, wind, altimeter, sky cover. Like I said, we have to identify certain types of clouds. Cumulonimbus, alto Q, everything like, especially with severe weather, because you want to know where that thunder's moving to, where the CB is moving. We feed everything into the tower. They will get our observations. We take snowfall amounts. Then again, we're not in the optimal place for snowfall readings. We have to, let me put it this way. We have a blacktop roof to take snowfall measurements, but we do have snowboards, providing that the wind doesn't blow them all over the place. And we already had lost one a couple days ago, so we had to have that replaced. So it's probably located on the tarmac somewhere, one of our snowboards.
Lovely.
So, yeah. So, we do pretty well when it comes to snow for the most part. If it's no wind, we could get a good reading on the snow. If there's wind, we do a meltdown every hour. Whether we do the meltdown ourselves or we use the ASOS precipitation to get an hourly meltdown reading on its own. Then with that, there is a formula on the wall. Temperature at the observation, how much meltdown would possibly occur at that time. That's the best we could do for the situation that we've been put in here since 1999. And we've actually done pretty well with it. And it's, we know what, the Weather Service knows how we have to, deal with our snowfall measurements. There is no place outside any grassy area where we can take measurements. There's just none. And with all the construction around this airport, I don't think we'll ever find any for years to come.
Wow.
Do you ever, Rich,
Yes.
Speak with the people who are actually in the control tower?
Constantly. They just called me up. They constantly called for altimeter readings because we have to make sure the altimeters are all set. Anytime we have to take a special observation, which regards to visibility, ceiling, sky cover, wind shifts, anything, we will call them. They will call us to see what the weather's going to be like. They call us for a forecast. Now, the thing is, we don't do forecasting here. And we do get Port Authority asking us, they call up Port Authority on the hour for our snowfall measurements because they get paid X amount of money per hour to plow the runways and everything else, as well as there's a private snowfall company around here that also calls up. But they constantly ask What is your forecast? What is your forecast? Constantly telling the National Weather Service forecast is calling for this, calling for that. Well, then they ask, what are you thinking of? I constantly have to tell them the National Weather Service is calling for this and it's calling for this. Well, what's your forecast? Your own. The National Weather Service is calling for this because we don't do the forecast here. We say one thing, the Weather Service says another. Then there's going to be an issue. We just go with the Weather Service forecast when it comes to the winds, the snowfall, and anything else. We just don't do it. And a lot of us here have the ability to do the forecast, but it's just the Weather Service. They put out the terminal air forecast for the tower, so that's what's used. And we have to tell them, well, the winds at this hour, because they'll call us up and say, what are you expecting winds to do at 22Z? Well, the terminal air forecast calls for this because they want to switch runways. They want to go from 04 to 22. So what are the winds going to do? So just read them out the terminal air forecast. And that's the best we could do. They look for wind shifts. We take the special observations as needed. We're up on the roof. Sometimes how bad the weather is, especially thunderstorms. We could be up there 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times an hour. We're going to get hail. Is there going to be hail? We're going to get ice pellets in the wintertime. So, we have a nice big window here that looks out from the east to the south to the southwest. But everything else got to go upstairs to take a look because we're not in the optimal office to take weather observations. But it's from where they moved from where we used to be, which was in the old International Rivals Terminal. We had a great 360 view of everything. Great place to take snowfall measurements, everything. But then, like I said, the Port Authority moved us here back in the middle of 1999. And that's where we've been ever since. And one other thing, when the ASOS was commissioned back in 1996, it was installed in 1995, and we did a 1-year study in our office of temperature and dew point comparisons from what we used to use. And it was a 4-degree difference between ASOS and what we used to use. This read 4 degrees too high. And we always said it's going to interfere with the climate records, but that's the way it went.
Tom Contino wants to know, what's the difference between ASOS and AWOS?
ASOS is the automated surface. The AWOS, I think, automated weather observing station. I think it's from lower level airports. I'm not exactly sure, but I think like I want to say lesser airports, like maybe Farmingdale or Republic has like an AWOS station that they're not always open. They're not open 24/7. Like Islip has an ASOS, but they're only open for 19 hours of the day. They close from midnight to 5:45. But the ASOS, like I said, is $250,000 per unit. It's already outdated, sadly. Getting parts to that is become impossible half the time. What used to be, if a part broke down, we order, the technicians from Brookhaven, from Upton, would order it from Kansas City, overnight it, the parts replaced. Nowadays, you have to get another part from another ASOS, tinker around with it, and hope it works.
Oh, God. Joe, do you have Briller Jeopardy tonight?
Yes, I do.
All right, let's make it a Rich Rothmansky Briller Jeopardy, since he always nails these. So
the pressure now.
We'll wrap up the show tonight. You can solo this. So Joe, you play Art Fleming, okay? Or Peter
Well, thank you very much, everybody.
Your favorite, Dennis James, whoever you want to identify with, and ask away.
All right. Well, Rich. This is just for you, I guess. On this Briller Jeopardy, average snowfall yearly. Now, wait a minute. I think we've done this before.
Oh, let's do it again. I think I'll remember it.
I swear, yes, we did do these before.
Oh, you did do it? Okay. Maybe
yeah.
Scott. Maybe Scott didn't send. Let me make sure he didn't send me anything.
Philadelphia, Providence,
We did that
Rochester, St.
yesterday.
Louis, and Washington. We did that yesterday.
Did that yesterday.
We did that
Yeah.
yesterday. All right. Let me check to see and make sure if I don't have one for today. Hold on. Scott's still on vacation. Yeah, Philadelphia, Providence, Rochester, St. Louis, Washington. We did that yesterday.
Yesterday.
Okay. Well, we missed. Look, clearly, Rich, because you will get most of the answers right. When you don't get them right, you
Maybe
miss
lucky
by
on one of
one.
them.
Every once in a while, you'll miss by two. Okay. But I'll see that you missed by two, and I go, yeah, he missed by two this time. At least in my mind, I never say it publicly. All right. It is now 8:36 p.m. Eastern time. So I think we're going to wrap it up and say goodnight. And we're going to be here tomorrow night at 7:35, folks, to see what I got going on over here.
I'll be here.
Yeah, we can talk about the coating to an inch for Eastern PA to Southern New England, and then we're going to take Saturday and we're going to take we're going to take Saturday and Sunday off, right?
That sounds good with me.
Right, because we're still on this long stretch. Oh, we took a break the other day.
Tuesday, you're off.
Tuesday.
Yes.
Well, you know what? Maybe we'll let you know tomorrow night if we're going to take Sunday off. Okay. But we will be here tomorrow night at 7:35. So everybody have a great evening. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, guys.
Say good night, Rich.
Good night, Rich.
Say good night, Joe.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, gentlemen.
Good night, Gracie.
Night.